So how's it going? It's been a while. Been a really long time actually. What are we now? We're March. I think I haven't spoke on a video since last year. Yeah, what have I been up to? I've been busy working. I've been teaching. I've got a new Mac computer, which is very exciting. So I'm going to be doing some new stuff with that. What else have I been doing? I've been working on sounds a lot. So it's not like I've not been doing sounds. I've just been not sharing them. I've not been doing anything with a label. Just basically, I think Christmas happened, New Year's happened, and then you just kind of, we had our 10th year with the label last year, and then just kind of trying to get back in the swing of stuff. And not really feeling that, not really wanting to sort of share stuff. I think I did a video January maybe, that was no talking, but kind of wanted to jump on. I've kind of got an idea for a format that I think might work quite well. So while I was listening back to some previous videos, I'd made a playlist somewhere that basically meant I had like loads of the recordings of just like the earlier videos that were just I sound American today because I've been watching some skate videos. I've been watching some playlists of lots and lots of the early recordings that were just me jamming, right, and no talking. And I was like, that would be really nice just to be able to hear just jams without me kind of rambling on a bit. So what I'm going to be doing from now on, I think, is basically doing a jam video that will be sort of like however long the jam is, but typically around 10 minutes, I guess, and then do a talking video that will go out at the same time. So then you've got a bit of jamming, a bit of talking like normal, and then a standalone jam one, which will be kind of exploring kind of one version. So I think there'll be different stuff in each. Like this is already different to what was in the jam, which I've just done. But that's cool. So, we can kind of talk about that and play around. So if you like a bit of both, but you just wanna listen to some music, then you can do that, which I think would be quite nice. So I've kind of what have I got going on? So like, I guess like it's potentially you might see this before you've seen the other one. So there'll be another video that I'll link in the description that will point you to the jam of this. But I'm going to be exploring the sounds in this anyway. I guess the main thing that's different is I forget who it was because I'm really shit with names, but someone who's been kind of messaging me and stuff on the Elektron forum was asking me like how I've got like the Elektron like hooked up, and because I think they saw like in the background here like one of the plugs, which is actually the microphone, but and wondered if like the mic inputs and the line inputs were different levels and if that added to the quality in any way, because and I think YouTube does more a job to add to the quality than actually recording in. However, it did make me wonder, why don't I just record into the mic and check to see what the levels are like myself? So, but doing that, it's like one input, right? So there's not like a stereo input. Well, at least on this Motu sound card, there's not like a, I'm using one for the mic and then the final kind of mic input, if you would, like it's an XLR line combo input, is just a mono input. And then I remembered like loads of old school drum machines that I really like the 909, the 606, like pretty much everyone, although they might come with individual outs, really using the single mono out is really where a lot of the character comes from in those machines. The 606 particularly, because that hasn't got individual outs, but as a nipper I remember making like my own sort of like bad individual out version of it, because you can kind of like connect like the cables into like, there would be like pots and stuff on the 606 along the top, and then I took the casing off and there was like, I didn't know what I'm doing. I'm not really an electrical person, but I could just sort of put the cables on and then prod them around and see if that worked, and it did. But it just didn't sound like a 606 anymore, because I could add like reverbs and delays and stuff on individual sounds, and that's not how I had been remembering the 606 sound or up until that point. So there's something to be said for having the mono output. The 909 also, like if you have, like it has individual outputs for each drum sound, so like kick, snare, toms, etc. And then you also have a mono out and a stereo out, so like the left and the right combined, much like the Elektron. However, with the 909, the individual outs sound different to the main outs, and also each main out sounds different if you run it individually. So if you seem, and I don't know if this is like a thing with mine or whether it's a thing in general, but I know the individual outs versus the main outs is definitely different on all of them. However, if I run a stereo out, the mix between the left and the right seems fine, but if I run it as a mono, so just like one out the left or one out the right, the mix on the high is very different. So the shorts of that is like you're getting a very different quality of all the different drum sounds depending on the output you use, which is really neat. So I thought, I'm pretty sure like the Elektron's going to be pretty standard out of the individual outs versus the main outs, apart from the mix and the compression and stuff, which obviously does mix into it. But given they're so clean, I'm kind of thinking that, you know, I'm thinking ahead, like they're not going to sound dramatically different. I know someone on the Elektronauts forum done some tests and there's a difference, but you know, like the 909 is significantly different. Like it's hugely bassy out of the individuals and really thumpy, and sort of all the sub is gone on the mains, so which is cool. Like Jeff Mills often uses on the mains and the main PA and stuff, but then that kind of makes sense because they've a bunch of bass in there anyway. However, while I was using the main outs, and this is while I was dusting this machine, because I haven't used it for a while, I was rubbing my fingers up and down in between the encoders, and I nudged the pan dial here, and I just suddenly dawned on me, oh, I can do a wet-dry mix on the pan between the effects, because the effects are still coming out of both sockets on the main output, but the audio I can mix between either left or right? So at the moment, this sound, what have we got here, like this kind of squelchy sound, we're not hearing it at all because it's on the left. So I've got the main out of the rhythm is just coming from the left output, so if it's panned to the right, we're not going to hear it. However, both left and right will go to the effects unit, so I can turn up the reverb, and we have a wet only reverb, which is kind of like a pre-fade idea on a more traditional analog mixer, which for me is huge because I generally have my mixer set up pre-fade always, just so I can kind of blend the main sound and the affected sound in more sort of like, I don't know, it kind of creates a nice blend, and the amps are different, the gain stage is different, it just sounds really nice. If you're doing dub stuff, obviously you might want to have it post fade because you can kind of bring in a fader and then trigger off a delay and stuff, but you know, yeah, I think this is great. Obviously like the effects are mono, but two things with that, like the reverb on the rhythm, I don't know, it's okay, but I don't really like the quality of it. And one of the particular things I don't like about it is if you have a long decay, you have this crazy sort of stereo distribution, and if you have like a short decay, you have like a mono distribution. So I don't like that way that it's like, you know, moving between different stereo fields just on the length of it. I'd like it to be separate. So I typically end up using it, because of that difference, I end up using it for rhythmical or kind of textural stuff, a bit like a spring reverb. So this is perfect now being mono, either long or short decay, because I can have, it doesn't affect it, it's just a quality difference. And it ends up sounding a bit like, I have like an old Dynacord, trying to look to see what model number it is. It's like a DRS 78. It's like a really metallic, like reverby box thing, and it tends to use like stereo in a weird sort of cancelled stereo sort of sense. This reminds me of that, and I tend to use that rhythmically as well. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing is, on the delay, if you have it set to ping pong, you have a different rhythmical structure depending where the width is. So if you have the width to the left, it's going to be ping ponging to the left, so the rhythmical structures, you're only going to get the pong. And if you put the width to the right, then you're going to get the ping, so you've got like a double sort of delay idea. So then you can automate this if you want to kind of shift between different delay types, which is pretty neat without it having that woo thing that happens with the timing. So that's really cool. So you then, if you combine those two, you've got basically the ability to have a wet of just a delay, be able to EQ that with the low and high pass filters, and then be able to adjust the type of delay bounce, or the taps almost, with the width. And all of that is like automatable, so which is pretty, with the trigs and whatnot. So that's pretty amazing. Also, it means like less channels on the mixer, and all that kind of stuff. The downside, obviously, if you're someone who sits with your Rytm on the sofa and you're just plugging in your headphones, then you haven't got this flexibility. But like just run it through a sound card or whatever, or just kind of get a rough idea and then spin it into a computer or whatnot. I think it works quite well. So I'm pretty excited about that. The track or weird glitchy thing that's got going on wasn't really designed with this in mind. It was actually something I'd started working on many times, like I don't know when it was really, before one of the many failed attempts at trying to do a video, and basically like was cleaning it, like I say, to try and think, do I come up with something? And then I figured, do I restart the whole project to try to emphasize this reverb thing, or do I kind of try to find something so that sort of still sounds good? So this is a bit of a weird mixture of processes and whatnot, which is fine. The only thing I'm using is I've got like a kick drum, let's kind of mute some stuff in the background. At the moment we've got the wet of a high, kind of like a more high passed, higher frequency resonant kick drum. So this kind of idea, you can probably kind of hear it, but this is being spun through the delay at the moment. So if I take the delay away and then just have it running on its own, it's actually just take all of it. It's like a very kind of clicky, high, resonant-y kind of kick with some envelope settings, like some super sharp filter envelopes, really super sharp amplitude envelopes, and then just a bit of gain staging and whatnot between the two. But then you could obviously like use the wet dry on that as well, which is quite cool. So if you need to, you can, like I did at the start, just have some kind of like textury stuff. So what was like a kick drum, or like a part of a kick drum, ends up becoming a bit more of a texture, which is quite cool. All on one dial, or a few fill dials. The other sound, like the other part of the bass drum, because I was listening to Mike Parker, and he's got a track that he's put on an EP like a couple of months ago, and the kick drum in it's just so good, and I need to up my kick drum game. So I'm trying, and I kind of don't like doing stuff like that, but this is a kind of bad attempt at just sort of trying to bring in a couple layers within one kick drum that's more designed, as opposed to just embracing the glitchiness of what you end up finding when you just explore them. So this one's kind of got a sub element, which is kind of bottoming out a little bit. It's like crunching on the gain. We're using impulses for both these kick drum parts, so like the impulse and different impulse settings for each of those kicks, and then just a band pass with some high filters, and just sort of moving it around as well. And the sequence is just alternating higher pitch or higher frequency or lower frequency. A soft amplitude envelope, because we can have the click of wrong sound. We can have the click from the kick to kind of put the emphasis in there. The balance is way off. The bass is really flabby. I find trying to get good bass on the Rytm sometimes is difficult. It is what it is. The other sound is let's have some reverb back on this. I thought this was quite cool, just to have like using the bass just to have some texture, and that's running into it's running into this effects, which has a bit of automation on the width and delay and stuff, but with some, I'm using the other thing, so I'm jumping around here, but this hiss and weird texture is all in the effects levels, right? So putting a bass through this and kind of hammering the compressor quite a bit, and using the makeup game, or makeup, what is that? I always read it as mud, but I don't know, it's a makeup gain. You can really distort the levels. So this is something I didn't actually realize, because I just assumed, like if I'm listening to it on headphones, if I turn up the makeup gain, it gets really loud. But you can, this is really obvious as well, I'm sure you've seen this, but you can distort the whole rhythm. Just turn down your main volume, turn up your makeup gain, and you're not clipping, essentially, you're just clipping the out gain stage. So there's a whole load of distortion potential in hiss to be found in this one makeup gain, which is pretty cool. Maybe it's a P. Is that supposed to be a P on the end? Yeah, make muck up the mup. And I love some hiss because you don't have to do as much. It's just a bit of movement, bit of hiss, and you're kind of half the track's done. So that's the bass. What else we got in there? Like the basic timing I always do, so like you can't see the sequencing, but it's just triggered on every step and then reset, so I can set my own timings. So to save using like the timings, because it can be a bit rigid. What else is on here? Yeah, the distortion, the DOV, what's that? Distortion value, I guess. Like this kind of keeps the sort of the feedback in a distortion sense going, which can be really useful. And then the basic sort of main driver in that distortion circuit as well is turned up quite a lot. And that's kind of like, you know, this gets some crunch, this gets some crunch, this gets some crunch, and then feedback kind of gets you there. And also like driving into the effects also all just drives it. So there's a lot of like potential there for things to be bottoming out and crunching away, especially with the compressor setting, like really ridiculously short attacks and releases as well. I don't think they go any shorter than that. Oh no, they do. Yeah, but they're still pretty short. What else we got? And then we got like these kind of synthy sounds. So I've got like these are basically like the SY dual VCOs. I think both of them are from memory. Yeah, both SY dual VCOs. Different settings on each, but the other key thing is I've got like on each of these some mods set up. But these were like, you know, I'm finding once you get into the modulation setup for those parameters or whatever parameters you pick, it really just gets this lost in like very fine detail. Like as with any modulation, it just gets crazy complex. So it's not always clear, like it's not like, oh, I've set these modulations for a particular purpose. They might have been originally, but now they're just sort of the residues of different ideas that have sort of failed. And there's one for each of those. There's different modulations and different parameters for each of those, which is quite neat. And it also gives you, within that page, you've got very quick access to like changing stuff and just kind of exploring sound without having to kind of, you know, use the normal parameters. And this is all tracked to velocity. So each of those sounds, each of the steps have got their own velocity settings. So like this one's got a higher pitch and there's a different velocity setting, different pitch, different velocity setting, different pitch. And then the velocities to volume are turned off. So I've got the control of like what velocity does and what parameters it changes. So in this case, you know, velocity is off, the velocity is set to modulation, and this is what it changes. So high notes will influence it differently to low notes or whatever parameters I've set, which is quite cool. So you just got a whole load of stuff that's like essentially difficult to track what's happening, and therefore that's quite useful because especially with the rhythm, it wants you to use it in a particular way or put sounds into it, and trying to find ways to break it so I'm kind of not really sure what's happening, and then just working with like, oh, there's an interesting sound, maybe I can bring some brightness and maybe it's this parameter. So often I'm like holding down a button to see what the number is, changing it, fucking it up, and then going back to that number, you know, or just being freeform and exploring. So yeah, we've got so this kind of synth is the first one. Let's hear it drive. So it's this thing. Turn this effects off. So you can kind of hear it. It's very squelchy. there's like 5 steps and then a tuned like trig that you can't see out of shot. So there's that one, and then the other one is equally weird. So nothing crazy, but then the combination of those two things, you got like a bit of a rhythm, and then the kick drum's kind of holding stuff together rhythmically. Which is quite cool. But the kind of thing I was trying to playing around with is more the kind of dubby sort of, I don't know, like spinning sounds into effects, but just in the way that I like doing it, this more utilizing the pre-fades instead of like bringing a sound and it spins off into delays, which is cool. Just kind of being a bit more erratic and weird with it, and then trying to find, like especially this bit, because it's not actually going to play straight away. It's not playing at all now, which is interesting. Because I turned the effects down, that's why. There's a lot there actually now. Let's just stop that and restart it. Okay. Yeah, so just playing that for a delay. And of course we could go into delay and just turn the delay off. And we've got just a reverb, which is quite cool. So you've got the sort of wet dry mix of these two, which is nice. And then a kind of mix, kind of blend of the two here, which is quite cool. And then we've got the same deal on the other one. So they're different textures, so that allows like a little bit of like, movement over in this texture, or high frequency over here, or high frequency over there, which is quite nice and scary. I also find that it's so erratic. It's not because of the setup, it's just because of these sequences and these weird sounds, but like you really have to struggle to find where the rhythm is, which I quite like. So it kind of forces you to kind of play around and perform with it differently, which I think is quite cool. Trying to find a sense of rhythm and then trying to catch it like that, because I'm not hearing the dry, so I'm not sure when it's going to trigger it. I mean, I can look at the sequence, I suppose, but it's hard to... yeah, you can kind of, I guess you could watch the sequence to kind of get these different patterns and stuff. Which is quite cool. And you could do the same on this one. So yeah, kind of thought it's kind of fun. So I'm going to play around with this more. Well, not this particular project, because it's a bit funky, but I figured I just wanted to get a fucking video done. Basically, I'm just tired of like false starts. But I'm kind of liking this texture thing that you can kind of push bass into the distortion circuits and get a bit more interesting kind of qualities there. So might explore that, but in something else that's a bit more generic maybe, or I don't know, a bit more palatable. We'll see what happens. The other cool thing is, I mean, this is it for this, I think. There's not much else to say about this that I can think of. I don't think I've missed anything. There's no samples in there. There's probably, I'll share the project, but there's some other stuff. Like, I think there's a couple other sequences and some other bits and bobs in there, and there's almost certainly some samples in there, but none of them are being used. This one's not. Oh wait, is that being used? I thought I turned that down. Oh, it is. It is being used, but it's turned down. Yeah, so yeah, it's turned down. So there is some samples in there that you can use or whatever. I think they're just 101 stuff and random samples and things that I've just kind of sampled on the fly and put back in. So with this new random name generator, it's quite cool. But yeah, in terms of with the I mentioned at the start, like a new Mac computer, which is exciting. So I want to do it means I can do like better quality videos. I can monitor while I'm recording, which is quite useful because I could never do that before. It means I can do streaming, which I did like once or twice ages ago, but it was such a fucking nightmare. I can do that now. I can also, I want to do I can do multiple cameras if I wanted to, but I probably won't. Like, I can use my phone, I can hook up, but it looks a bit crap, so maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But the other thing, I've been using Ableton a hell of a lot recently, just to kind of play around with the core. I think it's Tors. I think it's Tors. One of the people behind Elektron's products, and like the software engineer, I believe, is set up their own. They've kind of left Elektron and set up their own sort of projects. And there's some really, really good stuff in there. No, Fors. That's it. FORS. There's like Opal plugin, but it's like Ableton only, so they're audio devices, but you can get some free stuff on there and some paid stuff on there. So I've been playing around with that. So if you're into Elektron products, you probably already know of them, but if you don't, you're gonna love them. They even have like a software version of like the Elektron sequencers that you can use to control other software or hardware. I laughed because someone said, oh, it'd be great if this was put in hardware, but it already is. Kind of the other way around. But it would be cool to do some stuff like that. So now I can do screen sort of share, that kind of idea. So I can do some videos on some different software stuff, because there's some cool stuff out there. Even like the built-in stock Ableton stuff is pretty impressive. And there's some cool plugins I found recently that were that I got some discounts because of my job, but also there's a free one that I want to show off by this super nerdy guy. Does like Air Windows website, airwindows.com maybe or something, and there's a plugin called MKII, a MKII EQ or Mac EQ, which is basically based on some old 1202 Mackie desk. So for me, having it's like a plugin that emulates the channel distortion and the EQs to some degree of those old mixers. So, and a really low CPU, really basic interface. So if you want to like run, you want to run your software through a basic channel strip and it sound like good, which is obviously super subjective, but if you like that early Mackie sound, then you're going to fucking love these plugins. So I want to do some stuff about them, because they just, I don't know, software's incredible, right? But it can just sound so dead sometimes when you think it sounds great, and then if you've got some hardware and you switch to hardware, it's like a whole other world. So you get like this really fine tune control in software, and by comparison to hardware, and then but it doesn't sound as alive somehow. And especially if you distort the mixes a little bit, it just sounds too separated. So that this is the first plugin, and I've got loads of soft tube stuff and different plugins that do distortion, and they're amazing. But this is the first plugin that I've been able to confidently put on a channel and just be like, this will sort that problem out really easily. So I'm really excited about that. So I'll probably do some videos about that maybe. But yeah, I'm done. I think I'm gonna go and have some water and upload some videos, I guess. Cool. I will try to get some more videos done more regularly as I'm getting in the swing of stuff. The picture looks good on the camera as well, so I'm happy about that. Learned some stuff. Nice one. I will see you soon.